recording just a minute since we were. As happens more often than not, when we call folks to come in from outside and we haven't been, while we were doing other things, then that person isn't ready to go. So here we are.
Proceed, Your Honor. Go ahead. Mr. Barton, I remind you you're still under oath, okay?
Yes, sir.
And Judge, at this time I'm going to be playing Barton 1, July 24, 2018 interview with Mr. Barton. I'm going to start playing at 1 hour and 28 minutes and play to approximately 1 hour and 42 minutes.
He's a very loyal person, and it's taken us some time to get here, but in the interest of self-preservation, you know, you can either be in the witness box or you can be in the.
You want to pause and have them identify.
Was that Mr. Carter, your attorney, speaking?
I wasn't sure who it was. That's what I was trying to listen and see who it was.
Okay. Listen a little bit more, see if you can hear.
He's ready to talk about that conversation. But I asked him this before, leading up to that conversation. Had she ever indicated anything to you? Had she ever asked, had she ever given you any inkling or any...
Do you hear that to be Bobby Carter?
Yes, sir.
Indication that she intended to do him harm?
No. I have never heard that. I promise you, I have never heard that.
And that's you?
That's me.
Okay.
Before we start this, do you have any questions for me about anything?
No.
Can I just say a couple of things to you?
Sure.
That's Sergeant Pope?
Pope, yes.
Took us a while to get here, but nevertheless, that's just part of the business, and I want you to know that I understand your loyalty. And as I was telling him, it's quite refreshing because that's not present that much. But we did come up here for a purpose, and we came up here for this moment because not only do we believe it's a proper investigative technique, but we believe it's in your best interest. And as these things move out, sometimes they get ugly. And I think this is a situation that it might benefit you just to tell us about that. Also, I wanted to let you know what I told your lawyer, that I'm putting my name on the line too, because that's how confident I am in you and about what you're going to tell us, okay? And through this process, we're not going to do anything to surprise you. And we kind of view this as you coming on our side of the table, okay? And it may be uncomfortable, but I think it's something that needs to be done for yourself.
I think a reluctant witness is a truthful witness.
I would say that's a very strong and accurate statement. So at this point now, do you mind if Detective Hayes asked you? Okay.
Okay. Are you prepared to? I feel the best way to do this would be just to let you tell us what you want to tell us, and then if we have any questions at the end to fill in.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Yes.
Well, you don't remember when the call was, but you remember the call.
Yes. I couldn't tell you. I honestly could not tell you the number of calls, the length of the calls, the time of the calls.
Okay.
Would you like some?
Well, would you like to just start?
I think a lot of this, I will tell you that I think a lot of y'all's trouble getting out of him is he's testifying from memory, And y'all know the details of his life.
I
a lot
understand
better than he
that.
does.
So I don't think we actually need to go through the time. I think, because I don't want you to think we're putting you in a situation where we're trying to trip you up at this
No.
point. Is that accurate,
Absolutely
sir?
not. Absolutely.
I want you to,
Right.
could you
So-
maybe diagnose the first call that would be an interest to us, not the time or anything about what
I
happened?
think there was only one conversation that is what you're looking for,
Okay,
okay?
okay,
And it was the last conversation,
okay.
and
Would it be safe to say there wasn't much talking after that?
no, that was the end of the
Okay.
conversation.
Okay,
And
so,
is that the last time you've spoken with her? No,
No,
we
because I
just
talked to her, I talked to her I talk to her every day, but again, every day was just
yeah.
every
So-
day.
So when let's talk about that conversation that you feel was.
Probably the last minute of the last conversation, she said, Gary is in the burn pile. No, she said, he is in the burn pile. And I said, what? And she said, he's in the burn pile. And I said, do not say another word and do not tell me anything. I do not need to know.
Okay.
And that is everything,
That
period.
you discussed with her.
Period.
She didn't say anything about.
Nothing before,
else?
nothing since. When I talked to her after that, it was, it was just like it was portrayed to y'all. We're looking for Gary and.
Did she say? Okay, so there was we ain't gonna get into time. So there was there was a couple of phone calls that. There was a couple of phone calls that was later than usual for y'all that night. Did she say anything about anything that was going on inside the house that night? Nothing between her.
I mean, no. I mean, like I said, what we talked about, and I could not tell you any specific, other than the horses were out, and
She did tell you that.
yeah, that she had been out after the horses, and
Now I know
You think that's why was that her excuse for calling you that late?
probably she was up, she was awake, yeah. I mean, I didn't think anything about any of it until she said that, and then that's when I said,
So I want you to know, though, I don't want you to think I'm tripping you up. If there's anything else you know, this statement that you just gave us, in my opinion, is very damning for her. So there's no reason in holding back at this point. If
No, then that's what this last.
if I'm going to give an ounce, I'm going to give a pound. That was
Okay.
all of it.
that was all of
That
it.
was everything that she said that had anything to do with whatever happened.
But that's pretty. I mean,
And I don't
you
know
got to admit
what
that's pretty
happened.
good.
Yeah,
I don't know when happened or what happened.
And here's the
or-
thing:
but
at
that
the time
would-
that statement was made, you got to remember he wasn't even reported as missing.
I agree with you.
Right.
Me and him's going to step out and talk.
Yeah, sure.
1 second, okay?
You don't
One,
want
I
us to
want you
step.
to know I appreciate. No, we're fine. I appreciate us getting to this point, though. I'm going to step outside and talk to him real quick.
I mean, that's your.
Just for the sake of attorney and client, our recorders are still going.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of people up here that wouldn't have reminded me of that. I mean, did you freak out? You freaked out. Yeah.
It was like,
A surreal.
yeah.
I've had things in this business that happened to me, and while they were happening, I thought this can't really be happening.
Yeah.
Kind of like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't, I was like, what?
We're not holding back at this point.
No, that's it.
That's enough.
Well, that's it. That's all there is.
I mean, did you feel like any of this was building? Looking back on it, those conversations.
No. No, I didn't see that coming at all. And literally when the TBI showed up, I was just in shock because I was like,
That would have been a couple of days after that.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That would have been if she talked to you on Wednesday morning or Tuesday night, and they showed up at Friday
Friday.
afternoon.
The one for that day. Do we have specific ones for that day?
Yeah, I'll explain it. You just say which ones you want.
You explain it to me.
All right, so We'll go into specifics. I know you don't remember. Maybe this will help refresh your memory, okay?
And I want you to know we're not trying to hammer in the specific time, because sometimes it gets muddied up in it. And out of curiosity, were you actually on Tylenol PM or anything like that? You were? Okay.
And Crown.
And what?
Crown Royal.
Okay. Would you say you were intoxicated?
Well, probably had been.
Were you groggy?
Yeah.
So that day there was...
But I think he wants to make clear to y'all that this was pretty much the last thing in the conversation that was said. So he would have had time to...
but I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to say you're lying, because we're trying to build this foundation of trust, because we have had situations where we kind of caught you in...
Well, and they don't want to get surprised at trial. They don't want some lawyer picking up something at an angle that they've not covered with you.
You know what I'm saying? So, was there anything else? Did she say, I hit him with an axe, or...
No. And I told Bobby, I said, I don't know. She didn't say anything about
the mechanics.
How, what, when, where,
so
nothing. Who.
When the TBI came up here to your door,
I was in shock.
But you were certain that Melody had murdered him.
Well, I'm still not certain, but...
But she had knowledge.
The indicators were that...
I think the way you described this to me is it was almost surreal.
Yeah.
Like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Natural human curiosity, though, tells anyone that hears that statement that the logical next step is, what do you mean? Not, whoa, don't tell me nothing else.
Well...
So we're not accusing you of being a liar, but it's a hurdle we're going to have to overcome.
My assumption.
You understand that's going to be defense lawyer. The defense lawyer is going to cross-examine you about the context of that statement.
And he's looking way out in front. I'm going to call my supervisors when I leave here and what? And I'm going to have to explain to them.
That don't make no sense.
I'm going to have to explain to them your logic that I don't know. I can't interpret your logic.
Yes. Does that make sense?
So if that's not what you said, and you did say, I did say, what do you mean? Because
I just want you to know, we view this as you being on our side of the table.
I am, because I'm on my side of the table.
Yeah.
And your side of the table is the side to be on.
They want to get out in front of cross-examination material. They don't want to be caught by surprise.
Well, and then we also, that is a very important, but we also want to be able to validate your statements to make that,
they're going to have to sell you as a witness to the prosecutor.
And we still have to overcome the fact that out of a 6-7 month period of phone records, the night that Gary was killed is still the only night in the middle of the night that y'all are talking. And you say y'all just up talking about fucking and horses being out at 2 in the morning for an hour. I'm sorry, your 2:20 in the morning phone call was for 35 minutes.
That's a 35-minute conversation. So
is that 2:20 y'all's time or 2:20 ours?
I believe these are in Central Time.
Our time.
Okay. Is it our time?
Whose records are those?
These are Melody's records.
They would be in our time, then, most likely. So that'd be 1:20 your time. I feel like there might have been a little bit more to that conversation, just out of my instinct.
If I was going to tell you this, I would tell you if there was anything else. I mean,
did she ask for
this or this is the same thing?
Did she ask? Well, yeah, you're right when it's tipping the scale.
That's right.
To make the decision.
So if I'm going to step across the line, it's like being a little pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. I'm either across the line or not.
That's really a damn great analogy.
That's what was said. And I said, don't tell me nothing I don't want to know. So did I assume the worst? Yes, I did. Obviously, I did.
Yeah. So in your own words, it's, when she said he is in the burn pile, what was your assumption?
That she had something to do with him.
Yeah.
That he was dead and burning.
Because that he was dead and burning up.
Now you said that he was obsessed with fire.
Oh, he was
I don't know how that plays into this, but
I don't either.
Yeah, that's well.
Always burning something.
Yeah.
Always burning something.
Yeah.
So.
That crazy people are obsessed with fire.
Yeah, but the evidence suggests that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Not. I don't know. I don't know. What I do know is that's what was said, and that's what I said.
And you said something to the effect, what? When she said Gary's in the burn pile, or he's in the burn pile.
He's in the burn pile. I said, don't Don't say nothing else. Don't tell me. I don't want to know.
Okay, so
I'm stopping at 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 4 seconds. 1 hour, 41 minutes, and 4 seconds. I have nothing else, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Weaver.
All right, Mr. Barton, my name is John Luke Weaver, and I, along with Michael Ray, represent Melody. You know, I was going to ask you a lot of other questions before we get to this, but I really want to go ahead and start talking. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
That's better,
All
thank
right.
you.
I want to go ahead and start talking about what was just played.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was going on right there, from your perspective?
I had already been back in my attorney, Bobby Carter's office, when we had talked, because I was flipping out.
Flipping out?
Yes.
Could it have been, and I'm going to, Your Honor, can I go over to the board over here?
Probably going to be taking the mic.
Well, I'll be closer to him, so hopefully he can hear me.
Bring it to you.
Can you hear me
I can hear you.
as I come closer?
Yes.
All right, so you were flipping out. Could it be safe to say that you were flipping out because you were interviewed 1, 2, this was the third interview, yes?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And then you were interviewed at least 2 times after that, but weren't you actually interviewed, were you interviewed 2 times in August of that year?
I thought there was more interviews than that.
Okay.
Yes.
So they wouldn't leave you alone, right?
Correct.
All right. And didn't you say yesterday, and this one shocked me, and I vaguely remembered it myself, but they actually brought with them a warrant. Was this on the 10th or the 24th? They brought a warrant with your name on it
Correct.
for conspiracy to commit murder.
I do not recall what it was for, because honestly, I really didn't look at it when it was scooted across the table to me.
Who scooted it?
I think Detective Hayes did. Not 100% sure, but I think Detective Hayes scooted it across the table, and I just slid it sideways to Bobby.
Was that this interview or the interview before?
I don't recall which interview it was.
Okay. And so conspiracy to commit murder and concealing the death of another, was that what it was for?
Like I said, I honestly, I did not read it. I just gave it to Bobby.
But you knew what it was.
Detective Hayes told me that it was a arrest warrant.
For you?
Yes.
Right. And they had also, in these other interviews, in this interview, been talking about things like the death penalty, right?
Correct.
All right. And so you thought they were talking about you, right?
I think my name was mentioned.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So it's safe to say you were freaking out. Yes?
I was,
All right.
very much.
So how did it come to pass that you and Mr. Carter decided, did you call them or did they call you for the 24th? How did this meeting happen?
I don't really know how we had the appointments that we did, because I remember one time calling Bobby and say, I just saw Detective Hayes and Sergeant Pope in town.
Would that have been before the 24th or before the 10th?
Probably before the 24th.
Okay.
But that's just a guess. I just remember that happening.
All right. So, and the jury's now heard this snippet of this very long interview, but I think the word self-preservation was used in this interview. Do you remember that? Self-preservation? That's for you?
For me, I said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, did you hear that in this interview just now?
I did not hear that in this.
Okay.
But
Did you also hear that your attorney kept saying about you being on this side of the table and not this side of the table?
yes.
All right.
I heard
And then
that.
you said this is the side of the table to be on, right?
Right.
Right. Because you were terrified of being charged with something.
Beyond my belief.
All right. And so you felt compelled to give them something even if it wasn't true, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you tried to clear that up, correct?
I did.
And I think you wanted to clear that up as of roughly October or November of 2018, right?
That's correct.
But your lawyer said no.
Exactly. You're right.
He said, don't poke the bear, right?
That's exactly what he said.
That's exactly what he said.
Yes, sir.
Because Bobby Carter's job was to defend you, right?
He reminded me of that regular.
Not her, right?
That is correct.
So throwing her under the bus to save you is something that Bobby Carter would obviously be willing to do, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's back up. I just thought we needed to answer some of those questions based on the recording that was just played
Yes, sir.
out of nowhere.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let's go back to 2014.
Okay.
All right. So Martha Jane and your dad was still living, yes?
Yes, he passed away in 2000.
In 2014. But he was getting sick at that time.
He had had Alzheimer's for about 7 years. Had over the last several years prior to 2014, had a number of mini strokes, and then whatever time this part of it started, March maybe, he had a bigger stroke that put him in the hospital and then the nursing homes, and he never came home after that.
Okay. So Melody would be coming up because I believe the words you used yesterday was Melody was more like a daughter to Martha Jane.
That is correct.
Because Melody doesn't have a very large family, correct?
And she has a very small family.
Right. In her extent, she has a number of children, but as far as cousins, aunts, uncles, all that, she doesn't really have it, right?
Right.
Okay. So she would come up and take Martha Jane to Nashville regular. Yes?
Which is where she was when Daddy had the stroke. Her and Martha were in Nashville.
Okay. And would she take your daddy to the doctor too? Help take care of him?
You talking about during this period?
During
or
that
prior?
period of time, yeah.
Well, yes, because if I couldn't do something, Daddy was only moved, I guess, ambulance to the hospital, and then actually she and I moved Daddy from one nursing home to the second. I don't remember how he got from the hospital to the first nursing home, but then from the first nursing home to the second nursing home, well, I think that's right. We put him in, I believe, her vehicle and swapped nursing homes. But yes, she helped in every way.
Every way. So would it be fair to qualify Melody as a caring person?
Very much so.
The kind of person that goes out of her way to help others around her.
She drove from Atlanta to Tullahoma to pick up Martha and then drive to Nashville. And
Regularly.
Regular.
Okay.
And I think one time had just got back home and Martha called her and she repacked a bag and turned around and drove right back to Tullahoma.
Okay. And she would do that all the time?
Yes, sir.
All right, moving forward. So about that's roughly the time you guys started having a relationship, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And yesterday, and you used these words, you thought they had an open marriage from everything that you saw. Gary did his stuff, she did her stuff, right?
Yes, sir.
Why did you believe it to be that way?
Because she came in with as she wanted, and most of it I heard from her, but that was kind of how I knew.
Okay, but Gary did the same thing from what you understood?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, you guys went to that wedding in 2016, Emily's wedding. Do you remember?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I believe yesterday a picture was shown to you. Did you see a picture of you at the wedding?
I don't remember seeing
All right.
any
Well, I'll
pictures.
tell you what. I'll pull it up. Who was that admitted through, Michael? So this wedding, you remember?
Yes.
All right, this is you in the background here.
Yes.
That's Dancing with Melody. Can you tell? I mean, it's okay if you can't.
Yeah, I'd say yes.
Okay. All right, here you are dancing with Melody again. Looks like a a snippet of a picture shortly after the last picture. Same thing right there. And you're over here, actually, is this you right here?
Yes.
In Payne 7 with Sherry Cooper?
Yes.
All right, so you were dancing with other people, having a good time.
Yes.
All right. This is you with Chad Bruce. Do you remember him at all?
I do. He went and got me a beer.
All right. And looked like he had another one for himself right there. Two of them, exactly. And is this Sherry Cooper right here?
Yes, it is.
Do we know who this person is?
I do not.
Okay. And that's you, dancing.
Not the prettiest face, but yes, that's me.
Not the best moves, but I don't have them either. All right, so this is you right here lighting sparklers.
Yes, sir.
Is this Sherry Cooper?
I believe so.
All right. And is this Gary Farris right here next to you?
It is.
All right. So Gary Farris, was he yelling and screaming at you at that wedding?
No, sir. We were all drinking, having a good time.
Well, what do you mean?
Everybody was having a good time. I mean, we're lighting sparklers together.
All right. Did y'all have any other conversations that day? Were y'all?
Oh, I'm sure we did, but
Yeah.
nothing out of the way. Everything was quite congenial.
All right. So he never had any crosswords with you?
Not a one.
All right. Now, I want to say something about, earlier, yesterday, you said, well, yeah, we weren't. It's almost, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. So, you're from the South, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. So, y'all are having an extramarital relationship, yes?
Yes.
All right. Though you believe their marriage to be something that allowed that kind of thing, right?
Yes, sir.
Right, but in the South, you wouldn't put that kind of thing on the front porch, would you?
No, sir.
You'd put it on the back porch.
Correct.
So at the wedding, you didn't flaunt that kind of thing in front of the kids, right?
No, we did not.
But you understood that Gary probably knew about it, right?
Yes.
All right. So yesterday, too, the state talked to you a little bit about what you thought you knew about Gary's health, right?
Yes, sir.
Did you know he had these spells? Had you
Yes.
ever heard that phrase?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I think you used the word esophageal cancer, but is it also not reasonable if you hear somebody having intestinal bleeding or bleeding that you could construe esophageal cancer even though you maybe never heard those words out of her mouth?
Yeah, that would probably have been my term for what it was. I think I'd guessed at that what it would be because, again, I had
That was your guess.
That was my guess.
Yeah.
But I had a close friend that had it, and he did throw up blood.
So that was just kind of your thought. You had a close friend. Maybe that made sense.
Yes.
Okay. And you knew he'd been in the hospital.
Yes.
And you knew he would have these spells, of course.
Yes.
All right. So not a healthy guy.
No.
All right. You never got the feeling that Melody was poisoning him or anything, do you?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. She didn't talk to you about anything like that, did you?
No, sir.
Okay. The state brought up y'all's 6-month plan, which I believe yesterday was the first time you'd heard about a 6-month plan. If Gary were to pass, do you remember anything about that?
I remember it said when there was one of the interviews, I think, with Detective Hayes and Sergeant Pope.
Okay. So what do you know about this 6-month plan?
There was no hard plan for anything, as far as ever getting married or ever even being together. But it was said, he asked a question, I believe, and I didn't answer immediately, and he answered, or he said, like 6 months, and I think I said yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just kind of talk about the nature of y'all's relationship.
Yeah.
Y'all were obviously close, and you obviously loved her. You testified to that.
Correct.
Right? But you also had another girlfriend at the time.
I did.
What was her name?
Christina Grant.
All right, so Christina Grant. Y'all were pretty close, too.
Yes, we are.
Are y'all still together?
No.
All right. But back at that time, y'all were.
Yes,
So you seeing 2 women.
I was.
All right. Now, and I'm not trying to put any words in your mouth or make any accusations towards you, but sometimes men have been known to say things to multiple women to get to keep both women. Would that be fair? that you were doing that back then?
I've heard of that.
You heard of that? Okay. So sometimes you might say things to keep both of your girlfriends.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I want to go back to that email in 2017. And this is, of course, after y'all went to Jamaica. So I guess Christina found out about that. She got jealous.
Yes.
But did Gary ever reach out to you?
Never.
Okay. And did you just knew Christina was upset?
Yes.
All right. Did you know of Gary and Christina having any contact after that?
I didn't know of it.
What do you mean?
I just kind of had a thought.
What's your thought? Can you go ahead and tell me?
Yeah, I thought that they probably got together.
You thought they got together?
Yes.
They went up to Nashville together?
I don't know.
Had an overnight trip? Have you heard of that?
I don't know. That was kind of she got to where she would be disappearing, and I kind of figured that might have been what it was.
Interesting.
Because I know that she had Gary's information.
Okay. So I'm gonna bounce back around. I do that, and I'm sorry. I can't stay in line. The district attorneys, they've got their nice notebooks, and they're constantly in order, and I'm disordered. That's why I get to be a defense attorney. But I want to go back to these interviews over here. So they come to your house. This is at Bobby Carter's office. All the other interviews are at Bobby Carter's office.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
That's Judge Carter. He's a judge now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Coffee County.
Correct.
Right. And at which one of these interviews did they decide to tell you they were going to bug her?
I don't remember. I want to say that it was probably either that July 24th or August the 2nd, but I'm not sure which one it was.
Okay. What do you think about that?
I was wanting to do anything I could to help. I mean, I wanted to show them I didn't know anything. I had, was no involvement, and I would do what I could
Protecting
do.
yourself.
Yes.
Staying on that side of the table and not that side of the table, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you did this, and at first you didn't do the recording on the recorder. Why did you decide to tell Melody about that?
I don't know. I just, at the moment, it was like, very early on. I don't remember what day that was, but I had tried to use that recorder. You got to hold it up with your phone and put it this way and that way, and it was awkward. And then when I saw her, I just said, they'd give me a recorder. They want me to record our phone calls.
Okay. I do want to talk about one other thing. Going back to the 9th, right the day before the 10th of July.
Okay.
Okay. And that's when this statement about the burn pile and all that, I believe that's what you said in 2019 actually happened, right? The statement that you say that you changed the time when that happened, you say that happened on the 9th of July? Or when did that happen?
I don't know the date.
Okay.
I just know that I had gone to Martha's house and was talking to her.
This was at Martha's house.
Yes.
That's when it happened.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk more about that. But let's go back to these recordings.
Okay.
So then you start recording her on these Call-Yos, which is this app on your phone. Like you got a phone, you get your phone out, you call her. Do you call her through the app, or how did that work? Tell me how it worked.
Seemed like I had to dial, for me to call her, it seemed like I had to dial a number, and then it went through, you could hear it going through a system or something. And then when it came in, it came in as like a recording, and then you had to answer it, and then it was her.
Okay.
Didn't know which way it was going.
All right.
That's been,
Right. It's been about 5 years.
More than
So
that.
more than that, between 6 and 5 years, because you did it through 2019. So you did it for almost an entire year.
Well, from the latter, we'll say August
Sure.
of 18 till would have been June of 19.
You recorded her.
Well, they did.
Right.
Yeah.
And in all of these phone calls, because they've been provided to us, but in all of these phone calls, did she ever confess to anything?
No, sir.
All right. And in fact, in these phone calls, would she talk about who she thought actually did this?
Yes, sir.
And who are those two people?
Scott and
Right.
Chris, her
So
sons.
that's what these phone calls were mostly about, right? A lot of the time.
It was part of the conversation at times, yes. I don't remember how often.
And did she show concern that the state wasn't investigating the people she believed perpetrated this crime?
Yes.
All right, and y'all talked about that a
Yeah.
lot. Of course, you also talked about the normal stuff. I love you, all those things. And that's just a very simple, by the way. All that means is everything, all of it. We're going to make it through all of it.
Yes, sir.
Because that started back when you were taking care of Martha Jane and your dad.
That's correct.
And that's when y'all first fell in love.
That's correct.
No top secret meaning to all.
No.
Okay. So in all those phone calls, nothing.
Nothing.
But then you said too, because I mean, you know how the whole thing looked. You went, got her. I think you got her a burner phone. That's the word he uses.
Yes.
What do you call those phones?
Straight talk.
Straight talk phone. All right, straight talk phone. Go to Walmart, get a straight talk phone. You gave it to her because you wanted to see if maybe you could get something out of it.
That's correct.
Because at the end of the day, you were dating her, and you didn't want to be with somebody that killed her husband, right?
That's correct.
That's right.
That's right.
So you did this, and in all those interviews, all those times that you were questioning her, did she confess to murder?
Never.
Who did she still maintain did this, in her opinion, best she could tell?
Chris and Scott.
Okay. Because let's talk about, can you remember some of the odd and strange things Chris and Scott were doing throughout 2018 and 2019? Do you remember any of that when y'all were talking on the phone?
She had told me about some instances with both of them.
Could you tell the jury?
One time, I don't remember the circumstances, but Chris came to the house and threatened to beat her unrecognizable and stand over her grave and watch them lower her into the grave.
Okay. That's concerning. Anything else? What about Scott? What were some of the things Scott was doing on the property?
Scott stayed gone a lot. He'd go play golf, and that's what I was told. Scott would go play golf. He'd be gone. He'd come in and just explode over nothing.
On his mama.
Yes. Yes, on his mama.
Right. So he was showing a lot of anger towards his mama through 2018,
Yes.
2019. What about the assets, the family assets, and the property? What was Scott doing? Can you remember? And it's okay if you can't, but just what you can.
Oh, the only thing that I know was, that Scott would come over and get a debit card, credit card, whichever it was from Melody, or sometimes from Gary, just so he could go do something.
So mentioning the credit card. So this credit card that she had from you, that goes back years, right?
Yes.
Tell the jury about that.
It started, I gave it to her, I think initially, back when we first started with Dad and Martha, in case she had to pay for something, because I think, like I said yesterday, she had to handle the septic tank people coming out and digging up the backyard and pumping the septic tank, and because I was at work, and if there was anything that she had to pay for, she would have my credit card. But she never did have to use it even for that, but she had it for that. Plus, like I said, also that Gary had at times cut the credit cards off to her, to all of them, I assumed.
Did that to everybody in the family, right?
Yes, yeah. But that way she would have something to just not be like be in Tullahoma or be in Nashville and not be able to get something to eat or gas. But again, she never did use it, not a single time in all those years.
Which I'm not saying. I'm not saying you know anything about Georgia law and divorce and who owns what in a marriage. But how about this? When you were married before,
Yes,
I think you were married for 36 years.
yes,
Right? Every dollar that you had, that was also your wife's money too, right?
that's correct.
That's how that works, right?
Hers wasn't mine, but mine was hers.
Right. But that money was also Melody's too. That she could have had access to.
Yes,
That's her money.
yes,
All right. And she knew that, correct?
oh yes,
And she bought for her house. I mean, had you ever been to the Purcell Lane house?
No.
Had you ever seen any pictures of it?
yes.
So would you say it was beautiful?
Oh, yeah, it was Southern living beautiful.
You would say Melody pretty much bought anything she wanted for that house.
Yes,
And clothing she wanted as well, right?
yes,
So she didn't want for anything. Old Southern phrase. She didn't want for anything, did she?
that's exactly right. No, she did not.
Okay. So even though maybe Gary would keep up with where she was going sometimes, did you even know anything about that?
I think that if she spent, and I don't remember the exact dollar, but it was either 25 or 35 or something like that, he got a notification.
But she still got to buy anything she wanted.
Yeah, yeah, it didn't matter whether it was $35 or $350 or whatever.
Or $3,500.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Okay.
No.
I want to talk to you too. Did you talk with Melody through all this time about just some basics of, certainly there was some concern here, but we're talking about a lady that y'all were together. How big is she?
She's little.
She's a little lady.
Yes,
And then her two sons, they're giants. They're big guys.
yes, they're bigger than me.
All right. So, and I think you've mentioned some concern about that too, their size, when
Yeah.
you were around them. Yes?
Yes,
Okay. Y'all would talk about the fact that they're so large and she's so small and there's no way she could have done this, right?
correct.
Just from just the sheer basics of this case.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit. I've done it because sometimes I get a little heated, and I'm trying to calm back down. Because I don't want words ever getting put in your mouth, Rusty. I want you to be able to talk and tell the story to this jury because you were the one there, and you were the one that lived it. So I want you to explain what was around. So obviously she was in custody at that point, but in June of 2019, we call it recant, but you're not really recanting. You're just trying to better explain what she said to you, right? And when she said it.
But what was said was not changed. It was just when it was said.
Okay, so just to kind of better explain that to the jury, because that's a lot of what this case is coming down to. The district attorney is putting their case on the words that come out of your mouth.
Right.
So I need you to explain those words to that jury right there.
She said those words to me.
Okay.
I heard them. I just, in my confusion and pressure of, I got to do something. They're going to arrest me. They're going to ruin my name. They're going to put me, line me up. It came out because Bobby didn't even know I was going to say that.
Bobby didn't even know.
No.
So that's just what you felt like you had to do to preserve yourself.
Yes.
But then you tried to explain later that, yes, she told you about that, but that was after Gary was already found, right?
Yes.
Okay. She's in custody sometime around the preliminary hearing. A video or a recording was played yesterday where y'all are talking about a chess game.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, and I believe they're talking about Michael. Y'all are talking about Michael. And it just kind of struck my mind. us lawyers, we call strategy in cases chess games. So it sounded like you guys were, tell me if I'm wrong, but y'all are already using the language of the strategy of a case. It's like a chess game, yes?
Yes.
That's what that's about.
It was, as we put it, this side of the table and that side of the table. They're playing chess.
Okay. And speaking of lawyers, because there's been a lot of lawyers in this case and a lot of district attorneys and a lot of defense attorneys. Once upon a time, she had Manny Aurora, but Manny Aurora told everybody to stop talking, right?
Yes.
In fact, I think that's pretty good legal advice. I can go get out my card, and on the back of my card it says, what tips on talking to the police? Don't do it, right? Yeah, I didn't give you my
have your
card.
cards.
But I'll give it to you, and that's what it says. And that's what Melody was trying to do, was to tell you that Manny said everybody's got to stop talking. Yes?
That is correct.
That'd be some pretty good legal advice, wouldn't it?
I think so. Hindsight, yes.
Because here you are, things that you felt like you just had to say to protect yourself has gotten you in front of that jury right here and her sitting right over there, right?
Yes, sir.
And going to that, in that recording about, if you keep talking, I keep pointing up at that because that's where the sound comes from. But they're recording yesterday of her in jail. And she said, oh, I didn't do this. And you said, oh, I know, honey. But if you keep talking, you're going to hang me. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
You understood that to mean with just talking, it doesn't do any good, does it? Because here we are. Has it done any good?
No, sir.
So on the 24th day of June 2018, that was a lie about when that conversation happened with Melody.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I appreciate you for being honest about that. I appreciate you for coming down here and being honest, because you don't want to be here, right?
No, sir.
This has probably been the worst experience of your life, has it not?
Ever.
You're under oath right now, I remind you.
Yes, sir.
And you seem like a kind of guy that takes an oath pretty serious, don't you?
Yes, sir.
And you swore to God to tell the truth to this jury, have you not?
I did.
And right now, you're telling the truth to this jury?
I am.
And you tried to tell the truth to this law enforcement officer sooner than June the 25th of 2029, did you not?
I did.
But you didn't want to poke the bear.
That's what Bobby said.
Your Honor, if I may have 1 minute. I'm not done. I want to talk about your guns. I want to go back and talk about the gun. Sorry. I'm sorry. We can take a break. We can take a break.
Can we have a minute?
All right. I was going to let you wrap up and then let's take a break. We'll take one.
How long you?
Can you make it 5 minutes?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Let's keep going for 5 minutes.
How about this? Just let him break. Let the man break.
All right, we'll break.
Am I breaking?
Yeah. Yeah, y'all are breaking. Yes. We're just going to sit here in awkward silence for the next 6.5 minutes. Go ahead.
Just briefly, Rusty, some things I missed there, but I want to clear up. So there was some talk in your cross-examination yesterday about guns, all the guns you own.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You didn't have any missing guns that you couldn't account for, right?
No, sir.
How about any guns that maybe Martha Jane had, right? Did she ever say she was missing a gun?
No.
All right. And any guns that you would have moved from your house, it was because of the children of your daughter or her husband?
Her husband.
Okay. But that's why things were moved around.
Well, there were no guns at their house, my daughter and her husband's house. I mean, I just didn't take guns in the house.
Because of respect for them?
Yes.
Okay. But none were missing?
No.
None unaccounted for?
No.
You let them search your property?
I did.
Okay. And let's go to your alibi. During that time period, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, in that time period, I mean, you presented receipts. I think you said you were at Walmart showing your pasta recipe. Is that right?
I went to Food Line and...
Food Line, my bad.
Yes.
Okay, so you went to Food Line.
Yes.
And you were on video. You were in Tullahoma, Tennessee.
Yes.
Clear.
Clear.
And had they actually, and I don't know that they did, but it's all there. Anything you would have ever wanted to see on you would have shown you were in Tullahoma, Tennessee.
Yes.
Okay.
And I went to Food Line twice that day.
Okay.
Detective Hayes actually reminded me of that during one of the interviews.
Okay. So they knew where you were.
Yes.
All right. Anything else, Mike? That's all I have for this witness, Judge.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor, if I may. Rusty, I want to congratulate you. Your memory has improved greatly from yesterday to today, hasn't it?
I don't know. I thought we went over the same thing.
Who did you talk to last night about this case?
Nobody.
You have any conversations with anybody?
No, sir. Oh, well, I had conversations. I talked to my daughter.
That was it?
Yeah.
Talk about the case?
No.
Did you... Defense counsel was asking questions, and you were freely answering those questions and giving actually commentary on stuff based on no evidence whatsoever. Isn't that right?
I don't know. I don't understand what you're saying.
Do you remember right at the moment, about 30 minutes ago, Mr. Weaver asked you about whether Gary and Christina were having an affair or relationship? Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And he asked you to pontificate about your opinion on that, correct?
Yes, sir.
You have no evidence whatsoever that Gary was having an affair with Christina, do you?
No, sir.
You're just speculating, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
You're just trying to help Melody, aren't you?
No, I was just saying, but that's what I said, wasn't it?
Well, you agree that they're trying to help Melody, right?
Sure.
Now, yesterday, did you wink at Melody?
No, sir.
You didn't make any facial expressions at her?
Not that I'm aware of. I've tried real hard not to.
You were looking at her about talking about that black diamond, though, weren't you?
I don't know.
Sir, a lot of questions were asked to you by defense counsel about, for example, what guns were missing or not missing from Martha Jane's and other questions like that. And you agree with me that those are based on your word, what you say, right?
My word or what I was told, yes.
But it's based on your word whether or not to believe that. Is that correct?
I'm not following where you're
All right,
going.
let's see if you follow this. You agree with me that this jury has to decide your credibility, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming, yes.
And when they ask questions about guns and things like that, you agree that your word is all that you have to prove that. Isn't that right?
Yes, I'm saying either what I know or what I've been told or as we said, what I assumed.
And ultimately, the jury, you agree, is going to have to decide when you're telling the truth in this case. Is that true?
Yes.
But you would also agree that on July 24th, 2018, sitting for hours with your attorney, we have a recording of you saying, Melody told me Gary's in the burn pile. That's the only recording we have when it comes down to your word, right?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Okay, let's just briefly explain, because I know sometimes when Mr. Focus asks you things, do you understand everything he asks you?
didn't, but I was trying.
Okay, you didn't, but you were trying. All right, let's do this. Number one, you've been in business for what? 50 plus years.
Yes, sir.
And what do you sell again?
John Deere construction equipment.
John Deere construction equipment. So to have those kind of relationships, you have to be a man of what?
My word.
A man of your word. Because if you promise something, it's got to happen. And if it don't happen, then that deal is over, right?
And future deals.
And they'll never call you again.
Yes.
Because you're an old school kind of guy.
Yes.
So you've told this jury what happened. You told it earlier about what you said on the 24th versus what you said a year later and everything.
Yes.
I remind you, sir, you are under oath. You are telling the truth.
Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Judge.
All right, you can sit down. Thank you.
Judge, may he be on call released so he can go home but subject to recall?
All right, you get called back, you gotta come back down. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, call your next witness.
State calls Sergeant Kuykendall. If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, have a seat. If you could please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your full name for the court reporter, please.
Absolutely. My name is Sergeant Trenton Kuykendall, and that's TRENTKUYKENDALL.
Sergeant, how are you employed?
I'm employed with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office
How long have you been employed there?
since 2011.
Can you tell the jury, are you a post-certified law enforcement officer?
Yes, ma'am.
What exactly does that mean?
It means I've been through basic mandate, and I am post-certified through the state of Georgia. I got certified in 2007.
2007.
Yes,
Where were you between 2007 and 2011?
I worked for the University of Georgia Police Department, where I achieved the rank of corporal, and I was employed there for around 2.5 years.
Can you also tell the jury about your educational background?
Yes, ma'am. I have bachelor's degrees in psychology, criminal justice, and early childhood education.
All right.
Certainly.
Yeah, if you could scoot up a little bit closer too. All right, Sergeant. Were you employed with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office on July 5th, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
And in what capacity?
I was assigned to basically days persons, which was our major crimes unit.
And what was your title at that time?
Detective.
What's the difference between detective, investigator, sergeant, all of those titles?
Investigators are our deputy level investigators, and our detectives are specifically corporal level investigators, and you have sergeants who are the unit supervisors.
So you were a detective in 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Sergeant now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to make sure I have your titles accurate. Were you called out to 2155 Purcell Lane on July 5th, 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Around what time?
It was around, we arrived on scene at around 1:30, and I believe we left just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
I'm sorry, you left when?
Just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and got there about 1:30.
I see what you're saying. Okay. When you arrived on scene, what was the first thing you did?
When we arrived on scene, we initially got directed towards the back of the residence. On the way there, we met with Lieutenant Simmons and were briefed on some of the basic information that was known at the time.
So what was the information that you had that you were briefed on? prior to walking into the scene?
Essentially, we knew that one of the individuals that lived at the house, his name was Gary, he was missing. Nobody had seen him in a few days. We knew that what were believed to be human remains were found on the fire that was in the back. We also knew that some people had already started talking about some concerning things when they were away from other members of the family, such as seeing blood in the basement near the stairs, and also there being a gun that was seen a few days before and now wasn't seen anymore. So that was some of the initial basic information we had been given.
So when you were briefed by Lieutenant Simmons, what did you do next?
I went and looked at basically the burn pile in the backyard where the human remains were believed to be at.
Did you contact anyone, anybody of your supervisors?
Certainly. After looking at the burn pile, I contacted Sergeant Hands, who was my supervisor at the time.
Okay, and was crime scene called out?
Yes, ma'am.
When you looked at the pile, the burn pile, and then called Sergeant Hands, how was this investigation being handled? What was it being handled as?
We look at all death investigations as potential homicides when we first get on scene and we first start learning the information. Sometimes that can steer an investigation very quickly towards it. Basically, we get evidence and we get information, we start talking to the family, and it can steer investigations towards believing that the crimes are of a natural death or an accidental death. And in this particular case, we didn't have much information, so we were treating it like a homicide, but at the same time, we were just following our standard protocols as we would with any death investigation.
Did someone eventually get a search warrant for the residence?
Yes, ma'am.
Why would law enforcement want a search warrant for the residence at that point?
So that we have legal grounds to search the residence and the curtilage and the property.
Once that was obtained, what were you tasked with doing on the scene?
The first thing I was actually tasked with doing was speaking with Scott Farris.
Speaking with who?
Scott.
Okay. How long did you speak with him for?
About an hour and a half.
And did you learn some information from him that allowed you to move forward and speak with someone else?
Yes, ma'am.
Who did you speak with after that?
Chris Farris.
And did Chris Farris share helpful information to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Was Scott Farris the one who had mentioned the concerning things that you had previously testified to?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Chris Farris share some concerning things?
He also did, yes, ma'am.
Were you present when the fire detective, Shane Daniels, was there?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
And were you present when he checked Scott Farris and Melody Farris' hands?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe that process to the jury?
Certainly. He had several buckets and he had some swabs. I didn't get a good look at what specific types of swabs they were, but I did take photographs of him going through this process because it's not a process I was very familiar with myself because I'm not a fire investigator. So we went ahead and tried to document that via photographs, and I had also talked to Scott previously and got his consent to do this as well.
You were equipped with a camera?
Yes.
And you took photos throughout the night?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After standing with Shane Daniel when he checked Scott and Melody's hands, what was the next thing that you were tasked with?
The next thing I ended up doing was standing by with the tractor, waiting on a member of the crime scene unit to come and process it.
Why did you do that?
Because it was a significant distance away from the house. We wanted to make sure it was secured.
Why did you need to make sure it was secured?
So that nobody could go over it. Once we realized the value of it and that we needed to process it, we wanted to make sure that there was no potential that anything could have happened to it in the meantime.
So individuals that you interviewed had mentioned something about the tractor?
Yes, ma'am.
That interested you all?
Yes, ma'am.
In your investigation? Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So you stood by to make sure nothing happened to it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, after standing by the tractor, what did you do next?
After the tractor was processed, I ended up back in the residence, and at one juncture, I asked the crime scene unit if I could assist with searching the basement area of the home. And when I did that, I did get permission to assist them, and when I did that, I found a projectile on the floor in the basement.
Sergeant, is this the projectile that you found? And I'm showing you Thrasher 280.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that the location in which you found it?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you touch it?
No, ma'am.
Did you move it?
No, ma'am.
Did you feel your foot kick it?
No, I didn't.
Just a closer view. Is that exactly how you found it?
Yes, it is.
What did you do once you found it?
As soon as I found it, Lieutenant Ballard and Melanie Thrasher just so happened to be about 5 feet away from me, just on the other side of the chair next to the bar, and I immediately drew their attention to it so that they could collect it pursuant to their policies and procedures to maintain its forensic integrity.
Once you found that, did you kind of search the rest of the area close by to see if there were any other projectiles or any holes or anything like that?
As soon as I had found it, since they were right there and I got their attention, I let them handle more of that part of it. Because since I had found evidence, I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize any other evidence in the location.
After you found the projectile, did you search any other rooms in the house?
Over the course of the evening, I had searched some other rooms in the house. I was following behind several other investigators. I wanted to search more, but just due to the nature of the investigation, as soon as I would start to begin to search a room, within moments I'd be called away and asked a question or need to brief somebody on information I had. So I really didn't get the opportunity to search the house like I wanted to. But I did go back behind other investigators to research areas to see if we had missed anything. And I never found anything of note doing that.
How long were you on scene that night?
We were on scene until a decent bit after midnight.
After your task of being inside the home and doing that portion of the investigation, did your role move to interviewing witnesses at some point?
It did. Later it was a little after midnight, I ended up calling Chris again and speaking with him over the phone.
I want to move to the early morning of the 6th, so still the evening of the 5th. Did you speak with Scott and Melody?
That would have been on the 6th, yes.
The early morning of the 6th, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you assisted Detective Hayes in those interviews?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
How many hours did that take?
Can I clarify one thing? I
course.
actually spoke with Scott by myself out in the parking lot, and then I went in and assisted Detective Hayes with interviewing Melody Farris in the conference room at the precinct.
Okay. And how long did that take?
I believe I spoke with Scott for about 15 minutes, roughly, and then I ended up speaking with Melody for almost 4 hours.
And at some point during the 6th, did the crime scene open back up at the house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you assist in securing that property once it was opened back up to the family?
Yes, ma'am. I did go back to the house prior to going to the precinct.
I want to go back to the house. You mentioned that you had taken some photos. Did you have the opportunity to take some photos in the kitchen of the kitchen counter, items that were on the kitchen counter?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Sergeant, I'm showing you what has been previously marked as State's Exhibit Kuykendall 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go ahead and look at those for me. Do you recognize the items in those photos?
Yes, ma'am.
Are they fair and accurate depictions of the items that you saw in the home on the 5th?
Yes, they are.
State moves to tender into evidence states Kuykendall 1 through, what was the last number I gave you?
I believe it's 4.
4.
All right. Objection?
No objection.
You're good.
All right, Sergeant, I want to go over those. Okay. What are we looking at in Kuykendall 1?
This is a picture of a debit card issued to Gary Farris, and on the right side you can see another financial transaction card which is also issued to Gary Farris, and in the bottom portion of the picture you can see the wallet of Melody Farris, which is where these cards came from.
Those are the cards pulled from this wallet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to move to Kuykendall 2. And is this just a better photo of what was the contents of the wallet?
Yes.
And 3, Kuykendall 3, what are we looking at here?
That is an American City Bank card issued to a Roy Barton.
And at the time, did anyone know who Roy Barton was?
No, ma'am.
And the last one, is this the back of that same card?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's Kuykendall 4. Were those collected and taken in evidence?
The Visa card assigned to Roy was taken into evidence, but I don't believe the other financial transaction cards were.
And at that point, had any family members expressed suspicion of their mother seeing someone else besides Gary Farris?
Yes, ma'am, they had.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? I'm going to mark this as Kuykendall 9. I believe that's what this is. Judge, can we? Well, yeah, that's 9. Kuykendall 9.
I'm sorry, I forgot that.
That's okay. No, my fault. Sergeant, do you recognize Kuykendall 9?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you recognize that?
It's the card that was taken out of Melody Farris's wallet.
State moves to tender Kuykendall 9.
No objection.
All right, submitted.
This is the physical card that was taken into evidence that states Roy Barton.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then you spend several hours interviewing Melody Farris on the 6th.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you and Detective Hayes, was he in the room with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at any point, was she threatened or promised anything? Did you expose a weapon, handcuffs, anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Was she under arrest at the time?
No, she wasn't.
I want to talk about the following day, the 7th, and we have a calendar there if it helps. July 7th, 2018. You mentioned earlier in your testimony that you were tasked with calling witnesses. Was this when you called Chris Farris?
It was.
What is it that you called him about?
We were calling to reestablish communication and potentially talk to him some more. I'm not exactly sure what our goal in that was, but I did call him and try to get in touch with him and Jenna,
Okay.
who's his wife.
And did Chris or Jenna ever call you back?
Not at that time, no.
Not at that time. Did you eventually speak with Jenna Farris?
I did.
When was that?
I believe I specifically spoke with her on Tuesday the 10th.
Did you ever speak with Chris Farris again?
Briefly on the 26th, they had reached back out to Detective Hayes, Scott and Chris did, to reestablish communication after not communicating with us for a while. And he had started that interview. It had gone on for, I guess, an hour or two before I was able to enter the room. And I came in just to see if I could be of any assistance to Detective Hayes.
And that was later on in the month?
Yes, ma'am. I think that was the 26th of July.
Okay. Let's keep talking about the 7th, see what else you did in this case. After leaving those voicemails, did you reach out to anyone else?
I got with Sergeant Pope, and we went to try to find several other people that we needed to speak to. The first of that was Terry Braswell.
Okay, and who was Terry Braswell?
He was a friend of Melody's.
Did he live nearby?
He did.
After speaking with Mr. Braswell, Well, what did you find out from Mr. Braswell that assisted in follow-up?
In speaking with him, several things. He had gotten some phone calls from Melody Farris, so we spoke about that. In particular, we realized when looking at his phone that he had 2 phone numbers for Melody, and we obtained his consent to meet him back at the Free Home Precinct to forensically analyze his phone, which he consented to.
Which was done.
Yes, ma'am.
After obtaining that information from Mr. Braswell on the 7th, what did you do next?
We went and found Sherry Cooper, or also known as Sharon Cooper.
Who's we?
Sergeant Popenoff, I'm sorry.
Where did you go to do that?
At her house.
How long did you speak with, was she home?
She was.
And how long did you speak with her?
It was over an hour. I don't remember the exact time.
Your may approach the witness. Sergeant, I'm showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit Kuykendall 5 through 8. Can you please look at those for me? Do you recognize those photos?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you either the one who took them or were you there when they were taken?
Yes, I was specifically the one who took these pictures.
Okay, and are those fair and accurate representation of the items within them?
Yes, ma'am.
State moves to tender those exhibits.
No objection.
All right, everybody.
All right, Sergeant, I'm going to walk you through those. We'll start with Kuykendall 5. What are we looking at here?
That's a picture of the front of Sherry's residence with Sherry in the picture and her cell phone.
Okay. Is this on the day that you spoke with her on July 7th of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
And
That's
is that the date?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What are we looking at in Kuykendall 7?
That's her home screen.
And it was it late at night? 8:23 p.m.?
It was pretty late.
Did this case have people working long hours?
It did.
All right. And what are we looking at in Kuykendall 8?
We were looking at a picture of Melody Walker, who is Melody Farris, and those are the 2 contact numbers that Sherry had for Melody in her phone.
Okay. So Sherry also had 2 numbers.
Yes, ma'am.
So far, Sherry and Terry both had 2 phone numbers for Miss Farris.
Yes, they both did.
And did the family at this point, was the family expressing that she possibly had a second phone?
Yes, ma'am.
So that was of interest to you.
It was.
Did Sherry Cooper, was she able to confirm some other concerns of the family of an affair that Melody was having?
She did, yes, ma'am.
She corroborated some of that information for you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And after you eventually left Miss Cooper's home, did she reach back out to you at any point?
She did. She had communicated with me the next day. We ended up playing phone tag, and I ended up actually being able to get her on the phone. And I was at home. I was not working, but talking to her was very important, so I'd actually gone and sat in my car, and I was able to speak with her for a little bit about some other things she had remembered that she wanted to make sure we knew about.
So she remembered stuff and wanted to reach back out to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And at that time, was she able to shed light on Melody's state of mind in her marriage?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that helpful to your investigation?
It was.
All right, I want to talk about July 9th. When it pertains to this case, what did you do on the 9th?
In particular, I had been given some names of people to contact that had reached out to us as part of the neighborhood canvas. In particular, Joanna Newton and also Frank Allen and his wife.
Okay, and did you also make a call to Hampton Golf Village?
I did.
Why did you do that?
That's where Scott said that he had played golf on the morning of July 4th at about 7:30. He said there was a tee time where he played with Ted and Philip, which were his friends. So I had called to see if they would have video of that, to also see if anybody could verify that there was, in fact, that golf game plan scheduled and the manner in which it was scheduled and things like that.
Did they eventually get back to you?
Yes.
When?
I spoke to Trevor Cross, who was the assistant golf pro that day, and I got called a few days later. I believe it was on Wednesday the 11th. The head golf pro had called me as well and had mentioned that he had seen Philip.
Philip Samples?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that who was with Scott that day?
Yes.
All right. And then
And that gentleman's name was Sean Kelly that called me on the 11th as well.
on the 11th.
Yes.
Okay, you're kind of trailing off a little. I need you to keep it up. Keep your voice up. Thank you. Okay, so there was a day in between on July 10th. What were you
Yes.
tasked with doing on the 10th?
On the 10th, I followed up with speaking with Beth Braswell, who is Terry's ex-wife. That's where Ella and Emma were having a play date in Forsyth County. And Chris had dropped Ella off to play with Emma on the 3rd, and I was just following up with that information that I had gotten through my interviews to corroborate that that is in fact how it went and how that got established.
Where Ella spent the night?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And did you speak with anyone else on that, on July 10th,
I
regarding
did.
this case?
I did. I spoke with a John Lambert, who was a service technician who had done automation work at the home.
Okay, and who else did you speak with that day?
That afternoon, I had spoken with Jenna Farris.
And without really telling me anything that Jenna had said, they've already heard from her, but how was that conversation?
It was a good conversation. I got a lot of information from her in terms of corroborating the story and basically the timeline that Chris had given me. That was one of my main goals.
Was it a shorter conversation?
Let me give them.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's give me some direction. Let's don't talk about what anyone else said. Let's don't put your opinion as to what was confirmed, not confirmed, established, or anything else based upon what anyone else told you. Just don't say it. Just stick to the question and don't comment on what anyone else told you unless there's a specific reason and Ms. Frankish asked you that question specifically.
Yes.
All right.
So was it a shorter conversation with Jenna?
It was.
Okay, and she got off the phone with you kind of abruptly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, and then on July 11th, did you have the opportunity to go down to Burn Foreman with Sergeant Westbrook?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, why did you do that?
To speak with Angela Phillips.
Okay, and did you speak with anyone else when you went there?
We spoke with Angela Phillips. They had their attorney representing them. His name was Nick Latito. And Eric Durlacher, we also spoke with him briefly.
And did they give you some documents from Gary's office that day as well?
I got a timesheet from them that day, but then over the course of about a month, I received several emails from Burr and Foreman. I believe a lot of them came from Eric Durlacher himself. And in those documents, there was a lot of things that we...
Yeah, not into the documents.
Second,
yeah.
can y'all understand him? We've been going for a while. My ears are tired, so I can't
Yeah,
keep up with
yeah.
him. So slow down just a hair.
Normally, I got to speak
the
softer.
speed. I didn't think about the speed. Yes, you are a quick talker.
And those documents were put on a flash drive and given to Detective Hayes. I don't think I can tell you what was on them.
Correct. Thank you. Okay, and then on July 24th, who all did you speak with that day?
I spoke with Joanne Ward.
Joanne Ward?
Yes, ma'am.
Who is she?
She was a friend of Gary's from the building, but they didn't work in the same law office.
Okay, so she was interviewed briefly.
Yes, ma'am.
And then were you able to attend a testifier with the marshal's office at Purcell Lane?
Yes, ma'am. That was in 2019.
In 2019?
Yes, ma'am.
What were you tasked with doing on that day?
Standing by with one of the marshal's officers up in Scott's area of the barn.
And then I only have a couple more things to go over with you. You were briefly a sergeant of SVU,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? And you deal with crimes against children in SVU?
I do.
Okay. And you had the opportunity to sit for forensic interviews with Addison and Ella Farris?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What is a forensic interview?
A forensic interview is, we use the Child First Protocol here in Georgia, where a forensic interviewer asks non-leading general questions to children so as to not lead them to certain answers, alter their memory, and it's done in a very child-friendly environment and setting as to not traumatize the children further, because typically it's done for things that are very difficult for children to talk about.
So law enforcement generally does not interview children when they're witnesses to crimes.
Correct.
They're brought to, where are they brought to?
In this particular case, we utilize the Anna Crawford Children's Center, which is the center we normally utilize, and this was on August 9th of 2019 as well.
And you had the opportunity to sit for those interviews. And when I say sit for them, where are you located versus the children?
You're in a separate room watching a live feed.
And you were present for Addison and Ella's forensic interviews in this case?
Yes.
Okay. Was that essentially the last task for this case that you were really a participant for?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you were not the lead on this case, were you?
No, ma'am.
Generally, was the entire office of the sheriff's office, CID, helping and assisting with different tasks in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Give me one moment. That's all I have for you, Sergeant. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Judge, realistically, with us stopping, this is the spot, because I'm going to go for it.
All right. Okay, with that, we'll break for the day. Y'all have the afternoon to do as you please, but stay off the internet. All right. Just remember everything I've told y'all so far. Don't look up anything about the case. Talk to anyone about the case. All those sorts of things. Y'all can be excused, and we'll see y'all tomorrow at.
Judge, can we approach real quickly?
All right. So y'all want to.
Sidebar real quick.
All right. Okay, yeah, they're supposed to let y'all bring stuff in, so if there's a